let's try this again. So I'm going to talk about self-publishing a book, more specifically self-publishing a C# programming book. Most of you guys know me here, but if someone's watching this online, I'm Filip Ekberg, I'm a C# MVP. I started here at Redify 4 weeks ago. So, the book that I want to talk about is a book that I wrote. It's called C# Smorgasbord. I have a copy here for anyone who wants to touch it later. And the title here is quite interesting. So when I wrote this book, I initially wanted to write about a lot of different things regarding C#. So a vast variety of stuff. And I wanted the title of the book to kind of point out that I'm from Sweden. And what better word to use than smorgasbord, which is essentially something you say about something that covers a vast variety of things, and it's known to be Swedish, just like IKEA. Except I couldn't name the book IKEA, right? So, if you decide to write a book, or if you have ever thought about writing a book, you might ask yourself, why would I do this? Why would I put myself through this process? And if you decide to write a book, how would you go by that? So let's start to talk about the why. You'll learn tons about stuff you already know about. So I already knew about asynchronous programming and dynamic programming in Roslyn before I wrote the book. But during the time that I wrote the book and afterwards, I learned tons that I didn't know about prior to actually writing the book. It's like writing a blog post. So when you write a blog post, you learn about the stuff that you read about. And you need to contact people that know more than you do, which is essentially a good thing. And you'll also learn about stuff that you had no idea existed. So notice on the back of the book here, the spine. This logo here actually moves a little bit on each copy of the book. That's because there's a margin of failsafe or error, something that you need to take into account when you do the spine of the book. So I occasionally go to the supermarket and take up 10 of the same newspapers, and I noticed that everyone is different. So the front page is different, the back side is different, and that's because the printers can't be 100% correct. So I had to learn about stuff like that, and I had to learn about colors and all that, so you learn tons about stuff that you had no idea even existed. So now you've decided to actually go ahead and write a book. So where do you start? It's really like any product development. You need to have an idea that this is something that I want to get out there. You can write a book about really anything. You can write a book like Harry Potter or C# or anything at all. Doesn't really matter if it's already out there. If you want to learn something, you should probably write about it. And just like any product development, you need to have your goals set, and these can change along the way. So when I started writing this book, I thought to myself that I just want to take everything that I publish on my blog, everything that I've talked about in my talks, just get it printed, get people to give me money for that, which didn't really work out. So where do you really start? You need to find the tools that you're willing to spend your nights with. It took about 2,000 hours to write the book. It's just 250 pages. So you really need to be comfortable with the tools that you're using. Just as we're working with Visual Studio for the most parts, you need to be comfortable with those tools. Then you need to decide if you're going to go with your own publisher or if you're going to go with self-publishing. There's a couple of differences between doing that. So if you go with a publisher, they're going to tell you that we want 500 pages by this date, we want this many pages each week, and yeah, you need to produce that. It doesn't matter about the quality doesn't matter, they just want these pages delivered each week. And also they pay less than you get if you self-publish. So by self-publishing, which means that I contact a print-on-demand service, I send them my book and tell them that when someone orders my book printed, and just give me a piece of the money. They give you about 50% of the money that I take for the book. If I go with a publisher, they would more likely give me 10%. But then again, the publisher will actually help me market the book. So if I don't have a huge network on Twitter or Facebook, I'm probably not going to sell that many books, right? need to find people that are willing to help you. Connect with people on Twitter, connect with people on LinkedIn, ask them to help you market the book, ask them to help you do stuff like the covers, the layout, and stuff like that. So you need to find the tools. Anyone here know what LaTeX is? A couple? All right. But, no? It's not pronounced latex, it's LaTeX. So I decided to go with LaTeX after failing with Word. So how does one fail using Word? It's easy. So I talked to a typesetter, or a couple of typesetters, which I also found out existed when writing this book. They told me that 95% of everyone that uses Word do it wrong. So every time you mark a piece of text and you change the font color, you're doing something wrong. So basically every time you want something to have a different color, you should create a new template for that and see to it that everything that wants that color needs to have a template. And that's just a hassle. So I went with LaTeX instead. So on the one hand side here, we have a Word example. People will see it here, but it doesn't look good. So basically, it looks like a copy-paste from the blog, which is essentially was from the beginning. Then I took the Word part, rewrote that, and used LaTeX, and I got this beautiful, professionally looking feel of it. And this is the tool that I used to write the book. It's called Technique Center. It uses LaTeX in the background, and it's awesome. So for those that don't know what LaTeX is, you can think HTML and CSS. So essentially, TeX is a typesetting system, and LaTeX is, I think it's a subset of LaTeX. So basically, you write markup to get the result. And you can tell the TeX compiler to give you either a PDF or PostScript or HTML or anything like that. So you can get a lot of different outputs from the same markup. Here's an example of that. So we defined, just as in HTML, we defined that we have I'm writing a book here. I could change that to something else, such as an article or a paper or anything like that. But in this case, I choose a book. Because if we open up a book here, we're going to see that in the middle of the book, there's a huge margin here on each side. But if we were to actually print this book and just put the pages on top of each other without actually putting the spine here and gluing it all together, these pages would align differently when we have them just on top of each other. So that means that the TeX compiler needs to take that into consideration. It needs to move every other side more to the right or more to the left. And I didn't want to think about that. So how would I do that with Word, for instance? There's a lot of help in Word as well. Most publishers want you to use Word. It's been a long time since publishers actually allow you to use LaTeX, but that's because they're going to send you a template and tell you, use this, we don't care about what you think. So, I define that this is a book. I include two packages. That's sort of like including CSS. So these are somehow going to change the behavior of my result. And then I do something interesting. I define that every time a code snippet occurs in my document, it's going to treat the code inside the code snippet as C, the programming language C. And it's going to parse that and find all the keywords and then color them blue. And then I said begin my document. That's like doing the body in HTML. So I say hello world. I add a code snippet. This is called listings. So if you've seen that in a lot of different programming books, all the code snippets are called listings. That's from I think that's from the old LaTeX world because it's called the same here. So when this is compiled, it's going to result in something like this. Still doesn't look like a complete book, but it's getting there. Let's look at another example here. In this case, I'm doing the same thing. I'm defining that this is a book, but the difference here is that I'm saying that here's a chapter and this is the chapter title. And then I just add some plain text. And then I use my markup again to define a section inside that chapter and add some text inside that section. And this is going to result in something like this. Now so far I've only focused on the markup. I haven't focused anything at all on the CSS. So I could go back and actually tweak the CSS to make it look even better. So basically the same thing here with some applied CSS makes it look like, I can show you here, makes the chapter page look like that instead. So, do I even need to ask why you would code your own coding book? To me it's quite obvious, because you can just recompile it whenever you want to change something. If you want to go back in Word and let's say that you have a lot of code samples. In a coding book there's hundreds of code samples. And let's say that when I've written chapter 10, I've started to write about asynchronous programming. And there's no highlight for the async in a way keyword. So if I were using Word, how would I do that? I would have to go back into each code sample and just marking all these words and adding the style, and that's just a hassle. With LaTeX, I could just add these keywords to the definition of the language. Just as I said, this is the C programming language, use the blue color. I could just append use async, await, dynamic, or whatever keywords that I want, or use regex for patterns. Then that would just apply the next time I compile the document. So it takes, instead of taking hours fixing it in Word, it just takes me a couple of minutes to do this in LaTeX. And there's a lot of third-party libraries out there. So as this is commonly known in different circles, there's a lot of libraries out there. So the publisher that I went with, or print-on-demand service rather, there's an open source package for conforming to their guidelines. So they have guidelines of how much margin do you need to have on each side, what color profile do you need to use for your front page, and all that I don't really care about. So I just downloaded the package, made a reference in my LaTeX, and just compiled, and it just works. And in this case, content is king. So I can focus on the content in the book instead of actually focusing on the tools. So when I were using Word, I was more concerned about the layout of the stuff that I wrote. So I was writing everything and getting annoyed at Word because it didn't really align stuff properly, and the code samples were just horrible to work with. So in this case, I don't have that problem. And text is commonly used in the academic world because it has really beautiful math stuff. So there's one place in the book where I actually have I prove something with parallel programming in eggs. So you can optimize your egg boiling in the morning. And I prove that with parallel programming and mathematics. And there's beautiful ways in LaTeX to actually make that look good, which is what they want in the academic world. And another cool thing is that if you tell LaTeX that you're writing a specific programming language like C#, you can tell it to compile each code sample and verify that they're still working. Which is quite nice. So if more coding books were to use that, they would have less errors in their code samples. It might be harder if you have just portions of a larger code sample, but that would force people to write better code samples, or smaller. So the next problem, who proofreads the book? Well, I asked my friends. Most of the friends that I asked actually helped me out. And the funny thing is that the people that I really thought would help me out because they seemed eager at the start, they really didn't really help me out at all. So the people that helped me the most were the people that I didn't really expect to help me. Other than that, ask your Twitter friends or people on Facebook. If you don't have any friends on Twitter, that's not a problem. Ask someone to retweet you. They'll probably do that. It's really important to get people involved in the beginning of the book process, because a lot of people are going to have opinions about what you do and what you write, even though you might not like it. So don't be afraid of criticism. It can only be better. It's an iterative process. I'm not sure you can see what this is. That's a Word document with a lot of red annotations inside it. That's one of the first proofreads that I got back. Had more red in it than my text, which was not really fun for the first time, but it made the content better. So receive the criticism with open arms and actually do something about it. That's a good idea if you want to write a book. Ask your friends what they think, and if they give you constructive criticism back, use that and benefit from that. And take your time. If you stress out with the book writing, it's going to reflect in the content of the book. I've seen tons of books where the publishers has been really stressing the writer to get the book out, and you can't really see that in the content of the book, which is really unfortunate. If you work on something, you should really be proud of it and take your time. So for digital versions, right, so anyone here have a Kindle? How many of you have the same Kindle version? There's not many people having the same Kindle version, or rather there's a lot of different Kindle versions out there. So you're going to see people with the first Kindle edition, you're going to see people with the Kindle Fire, Kindle for iPad, Kindle for iPhone, Kindle for Windows Phone, and they all render the books differently, which suck. So this is like working with IE 1 to 11 and making it look good in all of them. So the first one here is the Kindle, the normal Kindle that most of the people have, and then we have the DX, and those two don't really render CSS at all. You're not allowed to align stuff any way you like, they just put it out there. And then we go over to Kindle Touch, which actually starts to understand CSS and floating and stuff like that. And then we go over to iPad, which sucks again. And then we have the Kindle Fire, which is the newest one, which supports HTML5 and CSS3. And then we have the PDF version, so you can actually read PDFs on Kindle, which makes the books look better. So this is really unfortunate. It's really hard for an author or a publisher to make it look good on all these devices. So if you hate reading your programming books on Kindle, you should buy another Kindle and try it on that instead. Right, so the final thing with publishing and book writing is, how do you go by the real publishing process and the marketing? So I went with a print-on-demand service called CreateSpace. It's an Amazon-owned company. So I went into CreateSpace, created my account, just uploaded my book, gave it a name, requested an ISBN, and it was sort of ready for sale. And it's available on all the Amazon markets, and it's available on their site as well. The funny thing is that they're actually owned by Amazon, but I guess less royalties if it's sold through Amazon. So if it's sold directly through their page, I get more money. If it's sold through Amazon, I get less money, but it's the same company, just different logo. So yeah. That's because there's more sales through Amazon. But it's still much better than going with the publisher. And the best thing here is that it doesn't cost me anything at all. So they just take a piece of each sold book. So if they take 60% of the book sales, and I haven't put out any money at all in this, that's really a great thing. If I consider my time free, of course. And get people to talk about this in social media. It's really important, both during the writing, before the writing, and after the writing, to stay focused on your book and really get people eager about this. So I got Scott Hanselman to tweet about the book. So I talked to him before the book was published, and I sent him an email when I had a sale going on, and he tweeted about that, and in a couple of hours I sold 100 books or something. So get influential people to talk about the book. Now I'm not saying everyone should mail Scott Hanselman if they write a book. So I also did giveaways. I've given away a lot of free books. I've given away a lot of shirts that has a QR code on the back. Everyone loves a QR code. However, the code isn't really for scanning, though if you scan it, you're going to come to the Amazon page. But it's more for showing that this book isn't about food, it's about coding. And the funny thing is that I actually was almost rejected to go into a place because they thought this was for a food service, and they wouldn't let people that work for other food companies into the building, which was a bit odd. Right. So, any questions?
Yeah, question. You mentioned that you're using LaTeX and all this stuff, and then when you switch to Kindle versions, you started to talk about HTML and CSS.
Right.
So,
so you can tell LaTeX to compile to different formats. So I just told LaTeX to compile to HTML instead of a PDF, and I just tweaked the CSS, and that worked perfectly.
okay.
So there's plugins called LaTeX for HTML or something that you can use.